Welcome to Logic. This course is hopefully going to be fun and straightforward, but also maybe a little bit challenging, so let's dive right in. Most of the videos are going to proceed like this one. I don't do really quick videos like that first one that you saw right on Canvas. I do longer videos because that's just how I'm built, but one of the ways that I try and make sure that you can watch them at your own pace and rewatch them is that the slide decks that I lecture with here are going to be numbered. That is, they're going to be cut up in sections, and then you can be able to see those numbers right up here by in that little red tab, so that when you scrub through the video, you'll be able to locate where you left off or where you need to go by looking at the agenda that I put up at the start of every video. So hopefully that will make it easier for you to kind of keep track of where we are and watch the videos at your own pace and within reason in your own kind of order. Okay, so these are the topics that I'm going to be trying to cover in this video right here. It's going to take a while, so sit back and enjoy the show, I guess. So the first thing that I want to talk about in this orientation video is just the modality. I don't know how many of you are familiar with taking an asynchronous online course. You're probably all familiar with taking online courses, but you might have been taking synchronous online courses, that is courses conducted through Zoom with everybody there together somewhat. This course is going to be different. Asynchronous means there aren't going to be any together class meetings. It's just going to be recorded lectures like this, where you're going to get most of your exposure to me, the prof, and you're not really going to get much exposure to classmates other than through discussions that we have on Canvas through the Perusall platform that you're watching this video on right now. So that makes asynchronous courses like this appreciably different than other courses you might have taken, and that's something that I'm kind of very aware of. One of the ways that I try and restore some synchronicity into the course is that we have office hours. And so you come to office hours, you're going to get live me, you're going to get live classmates if they're visiting at the same time. And so that can be a way to kind of get synchronous back. The other thing is that typically courses that you take that are synchronous, whether they're online or whether they're in person, they have a particular pace. You take an in-person course, a regular 16-week term course, and you've got one or two class meetings a week. The pace is kind of consistent. Everything's kind of measured out from there. If you take a course online and you have synchronous online meetings and stuff, it's still kind of paced. That pace is dictated by the professor. In this course, it's different, partially because asynchronous lets me, but also because there's no reason to kind of have things on a strict schedule. I can use this course modality to let you approach this course at your own pace. So this course is designed to be self-paced. That is, you can go as fast or slow as you want. Now, that puts lots of power in your own hands. Power is a dangerous thing. You need to make sure that because you have that responsibility to pace yourself in this course, that you take advantage of it, that you're thoughtful and intentional about the pace that you have for this course. All right? So don't just take this as extra freedom. Take this as extra freedom that you kind of pay for with some extra responsibility and your own awareness of how fast you are working through the needed material that you need to work through. Okay, because it is going to be quick, right? It's going to feel quick too, because you don't get those class sessions where you get kind of caught up by somebody else. You're the one who's going to have to kind of drive the bus here. Now, we did some research during the pandemic because we kind of everything blew up, and as an institution, we were concerned about how our students were reacting, not just to the upheaval in the spring term when everybody went online, but also after that. How do students adjust to all of these different modes of instruction that we had to throw ourselves into? Now, I had done online teaching before the pandemic. I hadn't done asynchronous teaching before the pandemic, but I was used to a little bit of this, but getting this kind of survey data out of our pandemic students was very interesting. And one of the surprising things that you can see in lots of these, you could freeze this, but it'll be up for a while so you can see these things, is that what we've got here is we've got survey results for people who took live, Hawk Live and Hawk Mix. Those are two modalities that we provided where some of the class was in person and some of the class was through Zoom. Synchronous, that was where all the class was through regular scheduled Zoom sessions where the whole class was present at the same time. And asynchronous, that's the modality that you have here where there are no joint class meetings where everybody gets together live online, right? And so we were comparing those with one another just to see how did students feel about those particular modalities on these various dimensions, right? So was paying attention more difficult in any particular modality? And you can see that students in the synchronous modality found it harder, a lot harder than people who were at least sometimes in the same room with other people, or even people who could like pace themselves and watch videos when they wanted to. The people who had to come to a particular class session and that was on and it was live, not being recorded to be watched later, they had a significantly more difficult time paying attention. Probably, I'm guessing here, but I think it's a reasonable speculation, that those classes didn't necessarily always happen at the time when you wanted them to happen, right? And so the flexibility of asynchronous shows you that we had even less people having problems paying attention because you're the one clicking the play button in an asynchronous course, right? So that kind of makes sense. But there's not a lot of difference on these other kind of dimensions here. Falling behind in your work, asynchronous is just, it's in the middle of the pack with the other kinds ways of delivering the course. Not understanding the material, same, no big difference. Group work, I don't know how much group work happened during asynchronous, but you know, it's similar, or at least it's on the low end here, so there wasn't any particular problem there. And communication with peers, same, right? So no, asynchronous seems like a good way to go, except for there's one dimension where it seems significantly poorer, both synchronous and asynchronous, when there isn't an in-person component to a course. Students reported significantly higher issues with connecting with their professor. So you're going to have to be aware of that. If you've taken an asynchronous course before, maybe you already know this. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't want to connect with me. That's okay. I'm not offended. But if that is something that you think, in part, your tuition dollars pay for, if that is something that you think is essential to your success in a course, that you get to know the prof, that the prof gets to know you, because right now I don't see you, I don't know who you are, I don't know your name, and even if I do know your name, it's basically going to be on a couple of assignments and things like that, so I don't get to know really how you think. If you want to change that stuff, if that's important to you, your comfort level, your performance in the class, then this is the thing that we're going to have to try and compensate for, because asynchronous courses are bad at it. Okay, so how are we going to kind of counteract that tendency for online courses to have kind of disengaged students that don't connect with their prof? Well, I've got 3 ways for you. The first one, I think, is the easiest one, and that is to visit during office hours, right? So I've got on the home page, on the syllabus, schedule of office hours. You do not have to warn me when you're going into those office hours. You just have to drop in. They're not by appointment. If you can't make those office hours because they're not convenient for your schedule ever or during a particular week, but you still want to touch base and talk with me, ask questions or something like that, then the thing that you do is you just drop me an email and ask for another meetup time that works better for you. Okay, that's the number one thing that's going to get you kind of more connection with me. But there are also ways to connect with classmates that can help you out, even though it's asynchronous and you're really not going to see any of your classmates either. I'm sure that somebody in class has already circulated on Canvas a GroupMe sign up. Do that. Get involved in those kind of back channel ways to communicate with your classmates, Discord, whatever. The way that this course itself supports interaction between classmates and myself is basically through Perusall. You putting comments. You can pause this video whenever you like and hit the plus sign. I think the plus sign is over there. And you can add a comment. You can take a look on that right hand side in peruse all and skim through comments other people have left and reply to those. That's kind of the dominant usual way that we're going to talk back and forth amongst one another and share the course and figure things out with each other. All right. So if you think you're going to have problems with engaging with the course, connecting with other people, if that's kind of something that makes a good learning environment for you, these are the things that you need to make sure that you do. Okay. Now, you also want to make sure that you do this because there's points at stake for that one. So that's a no-brainer. These ones, no points directly, but statistically, I can provide data showing you that people who visit office hours more, people who are more active in any way at connecting with classmates and being kind of active participants in a course and not just passive recipients of videos, do better. So be that person. All right. So I thought as part of connecting with the prof, I would give you some background on who I am and how I ended up here, because maybe not all of you are from Jersey, right? Pause the video and tell me if you're from someplace that's interesting. And Jersey doesn't really count, though. If you're offended by that, tell me what interesting place in Jersey that you think you are from. I'm Canadian. I have a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's and a doctorate in philosophy. And my specialty within philosophy, because you probably know already that nobody around here is just a biologist or just an accountant or something like that. When you're a professor, you have a subspecialty. My subspecialty, at least starting out, was epistemology and philosophy of science, and it's grown a little bit into critical thinking and a couple of other things as well. But that's kind of my dominant interests. So left to my own devices, that's where I will go for examples is physics and science and stuff like that, but I'll try not to do that in this course to you guys because that's usually not fair. This is where I went for my bachelor's degree, so I'm just going to say better than Jersey. This is the University of British Columbia. It's grown a lot since I was there, but they currently have about 40,000 students. Think of it like a state college, except for the sports programs are shit. And I spent a little bit of time, because I was a physics undergrad, in a particle accelerator, not actually in it. I don't have superpowers, but I spent time poking around there because I was a physics student. And this is, you might be thinking, this looks really neat and cavernous and huge and stuff like that, but in terms of modern day particle accelerators, this thing is really small potatoes. It was built in the 1970s. Not very powerful. It was pretty good at the time it was built for cutting edge research and stuff like that in physics, but nowadays still running, still a 50-year-old particle accelerator buried underneath those yellow blocks there. But they don't do a lot of what you might call cutting edge physics research there. What they do is a lot of producing of medical isotopes. Isotopes for radiation therapy, tracing, things like that. They do a lot of that there. So I had a little bit of fun doing that and other kind of basic physics there. The other good thing about the University of British Columbia was that we had an on-campus pub, which was a good place to gather with friends and stuff like that. From there, I went and did my master's degree in England, which was quite a culture shock a little bit, just picking up and moving halfway around the world, a quarter of the way around the world. At least they spoke English there. And I did my master's degree in the London School of Economics and spent a little bit of time at King's College London, which was 2 blocks down the street. And that's a picture of the campus right there, but it's not really obvious which building is which because, say, like NYU or something like that, it's a downtown campus, so they have some buildings that are entirely theirs, but they don't have any kind of distinctive architecture like Montclair State does. They vanish in other places. Plus, besides their own buildings that they wholly own, they'll lease a couple floors here and there in buildings around the place. So it's kind of invisible around a couple blocks in downtown London, and unless you know what you're looking for, you wouldn't even know that there was a college there. At least when I went there, they didn't have banners or anything else. I expect that now they would have some, at least outside their wholly owned buildings, but it was fairly invisible. But that was a fun time because you're right in the middle of downtown London, and of course, uh, there's more pubs there per square mile than like anywhere on earth. So we spent a lot of productive time there studying. And then the third place that I went was the other London. So there's a London, England, but because English people, when they colonize, not very creative. They just like bring over names and perhaps sometimes slap the word new in front of it. Uh, they did the same thing when they colonized Canada, and so I went to London, Ontario, which was, fun fact, originally scheduled to be the capital of Canada. I don't know the story about how Ottawa ended up actually being the capital of Canada, but London, Ontario is about halfway between Detroit and Buffalo, and so gets about the same amount of snow every winter as Detroit and Buffalo. Because it's right in the middle of all those Great Lakes there, you get a lot of lake effect snow, so that was fun. But pretty beautiful campus, nice kind of in the middle of farmland, but where the campus is, forests and trees and stuff like that. So that was a fun place to go. And the best thing about that campus was not only did they have an on-campus bar, but it was run by the graduate students who were nice and snobby about the kind of beers that they served there. So that was my introduction to microbrews and things like that. And so I never looked back. And Canadian beer, you might have heard rumors, is good. It's not. It's all the same now because it's all multinational conglomerates and stuff like that. Microbrews are where it's at. So um, pick good beer instead of mass-produced beer, and don't drink beer that's made of rice. That's disgusting. Um, anyways, that's enough about me. Now we're going to learn something about you and your classmates. What I would like for you to do here, this is the first time that I'm going to really kind of ask you to interact with this video and with your classmates. And so what I want you to do is pause the video and give us, in a brief comment, not a big, long, wandering story, but in a brief comment, when can you remember the last time that you changed your mind about something significant, some important, or at least at the time, consequential seeming decision that you were faced with, where you were initially of one mind, you were making one decision ready to go one way, but then you changed your mind. And you can pause the video at any time and post up in the comments what it is that you changed your mind about, and perhaps why. What is it that caused that mind change for you? And then I'm going to go on to flip my next slide here, because I think this is really interesting, because I'm expecting that for most of you, even though college is a time of life-changing experiences and consequential decisions, that it's not actually, even for you folks, going to be relatively easy for you to think of the last time that you actually changed your mind about something important. Those kinds of decisions, they don't happen very often. And so usually we are unchanging in our opinions, unchanging in our beliefs. Now, the positive spin for that might be consistent and stable, right? But one of the things that we're doing in this course, as when it comes to learning logic and learning how to think critically, is to ask, when should I change my mind? When is it rational to admit that I've made a mistake, or that circumstances have changed such that now I need to believe something different than I previously did? And if you will think about how long you have been on this earth, how long you have been on this earth as a rational individual, that is someone who can think carefully about things, it's not been long, right? And so lots of the things that you have learned in school and outside of school are things that you learned before you maybe were at the intellectual maturity that you are now. So this might be a good time to think about those things that you learned that you didn't really think about when you learned them. And maybe reflect on them and ask, maybe I should change my mind about some of those things. Or maybe not. Maybe they're fine. Maybe the people that taught them to me did all that job well for me, but maybe not. That's this course. One of its goals is to prepare you to do that kind of stuff better so that your thoughts are yours and you know why you have them. So the overall goal of this course sounds more ambitious than just that. And this is what it is: to make you smarter and to keep you getting smarter after this course. Now, even when I have the luxury of teaching this course over a full 16-week term, this is an ambitious goal. In fact, I would say it's impossible. It's impossible to get measurably smarter in 16 weeks. You just can't, that just doesn't happen, right? Smartness is a weird kind of thing. Intelligence is a weird kind of thing, but definitely it isn't something that just hitting 16 weeks of book reading is going to do fantastic things for you, right? Now, I do think by the end of this course, you're going to be able to look back on the things that you did in this course, and I think you're going to be able to appreciate, no, okay, maybe not measurably smarter as in, I score better on some tests or something like that, but you're going to find that, hopefully, if you've done your work, that I have equipped you with some skills and techniques and ways of thinking that actually are smarter than what you have right now. And so you're going to be able to look back right at the end of this course and appreciate, no, this helped me out. This is better. But because this course is so short, the real ambition of this course is not to change you over the duration of this course, but to set you up so that you keep changing after this course is over. So the emphasis in this course is not going to be on getting you to learn stuff now to make you smarter now, but to get you to learn things now and, more importantly, set you up with habits and attitudes that will get you to keep practicing those skills and to keep searching for new skills and new ways of thinking after the course so that you keep on with that progress, with that rate of improvement after this course is over. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to learn how to be smarter? Well, the philosophy of this course is that we're going to learn how to be smarter by learning how to argue better. Right? Now, there might be lots of you already out there thinking, great, I love arguing. I'm a good arguer. That's not the kind of argument that we're talking about in this class. We're not talking about debate, and we're definitely not talking about arguing to win. Persuasion is not going to be the primary goal of the kind of argument and discussion that we're going to be focused on in this course. Mostly what we're going to be focused on in this course is arguing for understanding. Our understanding and the understanding of other people. Now, a byproduct of everybody in a discussion coming to understand an issue better could be persuading people there to change their minds. It doesn't have to, right? So, and it could be persuading the other people in the discussion to change their minds, or it could be persuading yourself to change your mind after hearing and arguing with those other people to understand the issues better. You might figure out, wait, it's me who needs to change. And it's really awkward to describe that outcome as losing, I think, right? If you get into a discussion with people, an argument that's constructive, that increases your understanding, and as a result has you change your mind, switch out one belief for another one that you think, is better, that doesn't sound like a loss to me. So framing arguments in terms of wins and losses like a debate does, framing arguments and discussions in terms of persuading other people to adopt your viewpoint, not super constructive because it doesn't have anything to do with the truth or understanding. That's the focus of this course, is to learn argumentation techniques and habits, not to win or persuade, but to increase the understanding of every participant in the discussion. How are we going to do that? How are we going to learn how to become better arguers in that sense? Well, we are going to have to become metacognizers. And if you think you already know what that is, you're just going to have to get better at it. Everybody can get better at it. If you don't know what this means, it's basically two words mushed together, like we do a lot in English, not as much as the Germans do, but we do it in English too. The word meta and the word cognition. So I'm going to just pause here right now. And if anybody has a guess about what either of those two words mean and or what they mean when you mush them together, make some guesses in the comments and we'll see how well you do, and you can have a little mini discussion there. But now the discussion over there is over, and I'm going to flick forward on the slide here and give you the answer. And that is cognition is a fancy word for thinking, and meta is a prefix that we've borrowed from the Greeks that means, in this context at least, aboutness. And so metacognition means thinking about thinking. And that's how we are going to get better at using argumentation and discussion for understanding. That is, we are going to learn how to monitor our own thinking and the ways that we think about things to try and catch ourselves in mistakes as we make the mistakes, and to recognize good thinking patterns to try and intentionally kind of reinforce them and get more consistent and do them more often, as opposed to not helpful ways of thinking. And that's going to be tricky. So this is an ambitious course to improve your metacognitive skills and also your habits, your tendencies to engage in metacognition. That's going to be tough, especially for an asynchronous online course where you're not in a classroom like practicing this thing with everybody else. You're just kind of on your lonesome and it's self-paced. It's going to require some actual dedication from you and some commitment to do this. But hopefully the exercises, the lectures are going to help give you the places to do that. How are we going to learn that? Let me give you some more details on that. Well, three kind of chief kinds of activities that we're going to do in this course. The first one, like content, you might call it, right? We're going to learn some skills. We're going to learn some basic knowledge about argument analysis, that is figuring out what arguments are made of and how the parts of arguments relate to one another, and argument evaluation, that is figuring out some standards and criteria for what makes actually good arguments, not just good sounding arguments or rhetorically powerful or persuasive arguments, but actual real good arguments that that you ought to be persuaded by. So we're going to learn that. We're going to learn the habits of metacognition, how to kind of step back and watch yourself think and compare that thinking to other times that you've done some thinking, or to observe other people when they're thinking and compare that to how you might tackle that same kind of intellectual problem, right? To see, hey, should I be thinking more like them, or to use the way that they think to reflect on how you think and identify the good parts of your thinking and say, I should keep those and do that more, right? And to do that well, we're also going to have to reflect on how to become good metacognizers, which means that we're going to have to do some metacognition, thinking about thinking about thinking. So yeah, there's levels here. It's not going to be easy. It's going to, it's going to hurt in a metaphorical way a little bit, probably, but it's for your own good, right? So you're willing to do it, I'm sure. All right. So we're going to be doing those three things in three kind of parts of the course. First, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some psychology and philosophy. This is kind of an interdisciplinary course. It's mostly philosophy, but psychologists, they do a little bit when it comes to, how people think and stuff like that. And so we're going to learn a little bit of psychology in this course too. I am not an expert in psychology, but I know a little bit, enough to get by, so that my psychologist colleagues, they're not going to get mad at me for doing this, because I'm not going to say stuff that I'm not super qualified to say. So we'll tread lightly there, but we'll learn a little bit of psychology. We'll read a little bit of psychology along with the philosophy that we read, to understand better what it means to be a rational thinker. And we'll discuss that in Prussell. We will be taking a look at argumentative essays that you write. That is, you're not going to be writing a new essay for this class. We're going to be looking at essays you have already previously written in other classes. And instead of looking at them for their writing qualities or anything like that, we're going to look at the actual arguments that you presented allegedly in those essays and taking a look at them, improving them, rewriting those essays, not to work on the kind of the narrative flow of those essays, but to work on the argumentation and the quality of thinking that happens in those essays. And we're also going to be, as a way to kind of actually do that thing, we're going to do this might be kind of more basic, not really problem sets, but kind of problem sets. We're going to be looking at other people's arguments, and we're going to be doing a technique called diagramming to kind of unpack and understand better what it is that makes those arguments work or not work. Now, there is a fourth thing that I do in my logic classes when I have people all in the same room with me, or even synchronously online. And that is, we actually do some live discussions where we consciously and intentionally practice some of these techniques to try and reinforce the habits of good critical thinkers. We're not going to be able to do that in this asynchronous course, which kind of sucks and is kind of bad, but I have to cut it, not just for time constraints, but just because of this modality of delivering the course just isn't compatible with that, which is a shame. But we will at least be talking about how you would become a better converser, a better arguer in a conversational context in these other sections here. We just won't be able to kind of practice it where I can watch you do it and give you tips, which is kind of bad. But that's what we have to do in this class. All right, so over here you can see, because this class is weird, structured differently because it's self-paced. It's also got a couple of other weird wrinkles to it that you will learn about in the subsequent orientation videos. I like to present a kind of a visual aid. This course is kind of visual a little bit, to give you a kind of an overview of how this term is going to go for you in this course, right? So because it's self-paced, basically we're starting the course a day or two ago, and we've got an end point in the course when the course closes and everything's due. That's what I call the coursework deadline day, right? That's the end of term, right? Whether that corresponds with a class meeting for an in-person course or not, it's usually a different day, right? So this is an asynchronous course. We don't have any class meetings. It's the coursework deadline day, all right? And so what I've done is organize this course into modules. And each module is kind of a self-contained thing. And some modules require you to completely finish them before other modules open up and unlock for you to do. So there's a whole bunch of things. If you go to the modules page on Canvas, you will see a crap load of stuff there. Most of it you can't do. It's all grayed out. And that's because I've constructed things so that you have to work through a module. Once you're starting on the orientation module here, once you work through this module, it will open up the topics and thinking module and the rationale tutorial module, and you can work your way through those. These arrows here show you if you do not completely finish everything in this orientation module, nothing else in this course will be accessible. So I mention that specifically because this is a self-paced course. You might think, I'll blow it off when I have more time, that magical time in the future when you have more time to do work. You know that, right? And you'll think, I'll just hammer at this whole course and I'll get everything done in that last week or whatever, right? That is going to be a horrifically bad idea in this course, because you're going to get to when time gets short and you're still going to be in the orientation module and you won't be able to do anything. This stuff will all be locked away and you will have to work your way through slowly. There's multiple assignments in here that you have to do, multiple videos that you have to watch in sequence before this opens up. And then this will open up and there's multiple assignments and videos in here that you will have to work your way through one at a time before this or this opens up. So it's not like you just can be able to snatch up all these points just by grinding it out. Slow and steady wins the race. Okay, you're not going to be able to get a Hail Mary pass here. Um, that's not going to happen. So take a look at the syllabus. It's got a kind of a slightly different detailed version than this diagram that I have here, with a couple dates on it there to help you kind of see where things fall. But while everything in this class does have due dates attached to it, in general, those due dates don't have consequences. That is, there aren't late penalties attached to anything on this side of the diagram. There are kind of late penalties assigned over here because each one of these I have 10 readings for the course, 10 reading and lecture pairs. And I want everybody in the class to be doing the same one or two at the same time. So they have a kind of like an opening date and a closing date. And then there's late penalties after the closing date to kind of keep everybody in the same one or two spots as we get through as we go through the course. So I don't have like 5 people doing this and 3 people here and 5 people here, because then you won't get good conversations in Perusall with your dropping your comments, because comments will be like, once you get to reading number 7, there's other people who were there 2 months before you or something, and so they've dropped comments and they're all stale, and you reply to them, but they're gone, right? So they'll never reply. So to have a kind of an active conversation and the possibility of some back and forth, I've kind of sequentially released these according to dates windows where they get closed, where everybody's kind of in them at the same time. The stuff over here, though, totally self-paced. There will be people who will race ahead through this stuff and be far ahead of other people who will take a more sedate pace through this. And that's fine. The due dates that I have on these things right here are picked so that they indicate a nice steady pace to getting an A, right? So if you fall behind that due date pace, that's a little clue for you that if you keep the pace that behind that slower pace that you're on, you might not reach an A by deadline day, or that you need to pick up the pace if you want to get on an A pace. Okay, if you stay kind of near, at, or ahead of the due dates on this stuff, you're going to be doing great. You're great. Okay. All right. So there's 3 things that we're doing here. So on the left-hand side of that diagram of that chart there, I had those topics in thinking. That's where we're going to be reading and discussing topics in psychology and philosophy. Each of the readings, so I've got 10 readings, not super long, not super short either, and of varying difficulty levels. I tried to keep the kind of the more difficult, dense stuff later, so you'd be better equipped by the time we got there. But each reading has a companion lecture that is not just me kind of unpacking the reading, but me adding to the reading, providing some context, things like that, giving you some other different angles to think about the kind of material that was in the reading. And then each one of those particular readings and lecture pairs also has a short activity, a third thing at the end to kind of like wrap it up or help you reflect on what it is that you just read and watched me talk about. The second kind of big type of thing that we're going to be doing in this class, that's more on the right-hand side of that chart, is we're going to be doing argument mapping. And I use those 2 words, diagramming and mapping, kind of interchangeably, right? And what this is a way to look at arguments visually, to depict them as 2-dimensional kind of charts. If you've done mind maps or concept maps, they're kind of like those, but different, because they have different rules for putting them together and stuff like that. And that's where I have a sequence of assignments on Canvas. So I'll have lectures to tell you, here's how to do this part. And then I'll have a little quiz, which will kind of test you and say, hey, is this an example of doing that part of argument mapping well or not? To kind of let you check to see if you really understood what I was saying in a lecture. And then the next step is that you do it yourself on an example argument, and then I'll step in and grade that and give you feedback and say, okay, well, you learned this, you've got this part of the procedure down well, you got to work on this, right? Every one of those things, watching the videos to learn how to do it, doing the quizzes to kind of give yourself that preliminary test. Did I understand what he was talking about? And then submitting an assignment where you do it all yourself. Each one of those is something that is do-over friendly. That is, you can resubmit it, and you will have to, because I'm going to be expecting that you do it at a high level of competence. That is, basically get perfect or near perfect grades on a particular activity before I let you do the next thing, because each one of the activities, each one of the skills that I'm asking you to do builds on the ones that you did before. So if you this is not a class where you can like scrape by with like, oh, I scored 50% on that quiz or that assignment and I'm on to the next thing, because then you won't be able to do the next thing, because you got to be solid on the first thing before you can do the second thing, right? But it's all self-paced, going to have quick feedback for you. The quizzes are automatically graded by Canvas, so you'll have instant feedback. The kinds of things that you submit as assignments, quick feedback from me, hopefully in a couple of days or less, right? So you should be able to really kind of get a quick turnaround. So if you don't succeed the first time, that's fine. Usually people don't. I'll give you targeted feedback on what you need to work on. You try and fix that stuff, resubmit it again. If you don't succeed the second time, that's fine. I give you more and directer more focused feedback on the stuff that you still need to work on. You try again, you try again. You hop into online office hours if my brief comments don't help you kind of zero in on what the difficulty is, so we can diagnose it correctly and we get it done, right? And so we're going to start with a really simple argument in this process, right? That so that you can just learn the ropes of the mapping, because we're going to use a kind of a mapping software to help you learn how to map. And so the first argument is going to be really simple so that you can learn how to do that mapping. And then after you're kind of comfortable with how the whole procedure goes, then we'll work on more complicated and real world arguments and map those out so that you can understand how to do those, right? And so the kinds of arguments that we're going to be doing here are not just the kind of stupid made up textbook assignments. We're going to start kind of with those just so you can learn the ropes. But then as soon as possible, we're going to leave that stuff behind and do things that are actually real world arguments. That is, essays that you have written that have alleged arguments in them. We're going to look at those and we're going to analyze those and see how good they are. Or you're going to look at somebody's argument on the internet, because the internet, the parts that aren't porn, they're people arguing with one another, maybe about porn. But we're going to look at those arguments and we're going to see how good those are, right? And we're going to use that system, that procedure of looking at arguments and diagramming them visually so that you get a better understanding of what that argument actually is and how it works, or how it only looks like it works, but it doesn't really work, right? And the upshot of all that, I'm hoping to be able to teach you a different way to write, a totally different approach that's not focused on the writing, but is focused on the thinking, on the persuading, on the evidence. And so, especially if you are not the strongest writer, this will be good for you. I'm hoping this will be good for you and help you out the most, because it's going to de-emphasize kind of your writing ability, and it's going to emphasize focus, lean on your thinking ability, and make it easier for you to write after you've done the thinking. And we're also obviously going to get a better appreciation here for real life arguments and what kind of quality they have. Are they really good or are they not so good, right? Okay. I'm going to wrap this video up. I think I'm on like the last 1 or 2 points here. I have a whole complete long boring video later to cover these kinds of points in more detail, but I thought I would just give you some quick hits, some taste of the key things that you need to start doing like right now to have success in this course. And the first one is, please don't phone it in or procrastinate. I tried to warn you when we were looking at the chart there that you can't leave everything here, even though I did say it was self-paced and it is asynchronous. Leaving it all for later is a terrible idea, so do not do that, okay? If you are watching this video during kind of the first little portion of the term, You're on pace. If you're looking at this video halfway through the term, oh, we got some work to do, right? We gotta do catching up, right? If that's the case, or if at any point you are lost, the second point here, super helpful. Do ask for help. Don't be shy about going to office hours. It's not an admission of failure at all. It is you taking active control of your learning and your future and being efficient and not trying to struggle through it yourself inefficiently, but getting somebody who knows what's going on to tell you, here's what you should focus on, and just do that stuff. Don't worry about that stuff, right? One other thing, this course, I've taught it a few times. I've used these videos and the whole course setup a while, but because it's pretty complicated and it's got lots of moving parts, there's going to be typos. There's going to be broken links. There's going to be little things. So if you think something's not working the way that it should, please let me know. Because if you noticed it, then other people are going to notice it too. Or worse, they're not going to notice it and they're going to get misdirected or do the wrong thing and waste a lot of time and get super frustrated. So if you see something that you think isn't working the way it's supposed to, a broken link to an image on a quiz, there's a quiz question that's got a typo in it so it's not clear what it's asking, one of the links to the videos is broken or doesn't seem to be pointing at the thing that it's supposed to be pointing to, let me know that stuff as soon as possible so I can fix it. All right. And then this is a super important thing, which is don't think that everything that is going to happen in this course is going to require you to try once and then be on to the next thing. Most of the things that I'm going to ask you to do in this course are going to require you to do them more than one time before you figure them out. They're built that way. So don't assume that because something is due, some assignment is due on some date, that that's the day that you can do it on, and then that try is going to be the time when you will get past that and on to the next thing, right? So even if you're not sure that you've figured stuff out and you're not comfortable, try it anyways, get feedback so that you can try again and succeed. All right. That's the key here. This is a course where failure is part of the learning process. So take advantage of that. All right. In general, ways to contact me and get help from me. Obviously, office hours. I've got a schedule posted in the syllabus on the home page, right? Check that stuff out. If those are not good times for you, then I am absolutely open for appointments. The easiest and best way to get an appointment with me is to just send me a quick email that doesn't just ask vaguely, hey, can I have office hours? Can I meet with you sometime that's not regular office hours? Because then we have to go back and forth. No, send me one email, say, hey, I'm in your class. I'd like to meet you outside of office hours. And here are 2 good times for me to meet. So that all I have to do is send you back an email saying, fine, I'll pick this time, right? And then 1 email from you, 1 email from me, and we've got a time set up, not 5 emails back and forth where we try and guess stuff. You send me in that initial email at least 2 good times to pick from. I'll pick from them. I'll pick the best one. We'll be set up. Okay? You should expect that within 48 hours that I give you a response on any emails you send, any Canvas messages using the Canvas mailing system, right? And that if I don't reply within 48 hours, please bug me, right? Because like any prof, a little bit scatterbrained. I'm also the chair of the department, so I'm doing this and that and the next thing. So your email might have got lost in my inbox. So if you haven't heard back from me in 2 days, just send me a polite bug. And what that does in Gmail is it just pops your email right to the top of the list, right? So it makes it re-visible for me if it's already dropped down so that I haven't seen it, right? So don't be shy to do that. The other super important thing, if you're trying to talk to me, peruse all. I'll be checking that regularly too. So if you drop comments there, that's fine. Do not leave comments in assignments. I will talk more about this in a later video. But if you just drop a comment in an assignment, I get notifications for lots of things, primarily when you submit stuff. So again, also, when you submit an assignment in Canvas, you don't need to email me and say, ooh, I just submitted something, can you go grade it? You don't need to do that. When you submit something in Canvas, it gets added to my to-do list. I get a notification for it. That's all cool. If I've graded something and you go take a look at it and you want to talk to me about it, if you leave me a comment on the assignment, I don't get a notification for that. I might stumble across it by accident if I go back and look at that assignment of yours for some reason, but usually I don't have a reason to do that, so I will never see it. So if I have graded something for you and you have something to talk to me about it, then you should drop into office hours or send me an email. Don't just leave a comment in the assignment. All right, after this video, you're on to the next video. Actually, before that, you are going back to Canvas and doing a simple and quick quiz that requires no kind of background knowledge, no learning from this course at least. So you do that, and then you're on to the next video in this orientation module. So keep going with that, and good luck with the whole course.